I am a big solo traveler. My friends are usually too busy or can't afford to constantly fly to a million different places, so I do a lot of it myself. I flew to San Diego for my first time alone. I've been to most of the major cities in California except for San Diego, so I wanted to check it off my bucket list. I stayed in a decent hotel very close to downtown. As I checked in, I met a guy a little older than me in the lobby. He struck up a conversation with me about where I was from, how long I'd be here for, and if I'd ever been here. It was apparently his second time here, and he was also alone. He offered to take my bags to my room for me, since he was going upstairs anyway. I accepted his offer, appreciating his kind gesture. He carried my bags to the elevator, and we went to the second floor to my room. He set my bags down outside my door and said it was great meeting me and to enjoy my stay here. I thanked him again, and he left down the hall. I let myself into the room, set my bags on the bed, and laid down for a bit just to get a quick nap in. When I felt refreshed, I went back down to the lobby and was about to head outside when the lady working the front desk called me over. She asked what that man did when we went upstairs, and I told her he just helped me with my bags to my room. She then warned me that that man had been standing outside the hotel for a while, and she noticed him come in moments after I came inside. She told me that she was fairly certain he wasn't staying in the hotel, and if I see him again, I should stay away from him. This was, of course, very unsettling. I hoped she was wrong and he was actually just a nice person, but to be safe, I would listen to her. I went out and explored and had myself a day. I came back a few hours later to change into different clothes for dinner. There was a different person working the front desk now. In the hotel room, I showered quickly, then changed into different clothes and laid down for another quick power nap. During this time, there was a knock at the door to my room, followed by a quiet male's voice saying housekeeping. I didn't order housekeeping, and it was my first day there. Maybe they had the wrong room. I went to check the peephole of the door, and I didn't see anyone in the hall. That was beyond strange. Then immediately that man from earlier came into my head. What if it was him? I ignored the knocks and went to my phone to call the front desk and asked them if they had sent housekeeping to my room. And of course, they said no. So, I asked for someone to be sent to my room for my own safety, and 5 minutes later a hotel maid knocked on the door. I opened it and explained politely the situation to her and thanked her for coming. I then left the hotel to go to dinner. After dinner, I did a city lights night tour and explored some of the happening areas of the city at night. I got back to the hotel room around 10. I went up to the front desk worker and then explained what happened earlier with the man I met, who I feared may have been pretending to be room service to get into my room. I then asked her if she had seen anyone of his description walking around the lobby, and she said no, and to make me feel better she checked the live surveillance camera of my floor, and no one was in the halls. I thanked her and went upstairs to my floor and then to my room. I changed out of my clothes and laid in bed and put on the TV so I could fall asleep to something. Within the hour, I was drifting into a sleep. What I was hearing from the TV was kind of turning into a dream in my half-asleep state. So, when I heard a door closing, it became part of my dream. I didn't actually wake up until I felt the mattress start shifting as something was putting weight on the other side. I looked over my shoulder to the other side of the bed, and I saw a man in a black COVID mask and baseball hat getting onto the bed, reaching for me. He grabbed me, trying to cover my mouth so I couldn't scream, but I managed to fight him off for long enough to scream bloody murder. He continued to try to cover my mouth, but I kept struggling and resisting just long enough for someone to start knocking on the door. I screamed help. And by this point, surely the man knew this wasn't going to go his way anymore. He let go of me and opened the door and shoved the woman who was knocking to the floor, and she saw him run down the hall to the stairs. The woman came in to make sure I was okay, as I was in complete shock, followed by tears. Others from neighboring rooms came to see what the commotion was about. Hotel staff came as well, and the police were called. Based on the hotel video footage, the man somehow acquired a master key which allowed him to access my room. The mask and hat hid his identity, but I strongly believe it to be the man who helped me with my bags the first day. I believe he wanted to find out what room I was in to later come back to. It's scary to think he may have done this successfully to somebody else. I tried my best to enjoy the rest of my trip, even though I went through something that will likely stay with me for the rest of my life. The hotel gave me a full reimbursement for the entire stay, and they gave me a different room to stay in. Honestly, looking back, I probably should have pressed charges on the hotel. The hotel, of course, also gave all the necessary footage to the police department. I haven't ever been contacted to identify anybody, which, sadly, more than likely means the man was never properly identified or caught. The events of this story take place a few years ago, maybe in 2013 or 2014. Honestly, I don't remember because the story is such a blur and I've eventually just blocked it out over the years. It was Christmas break and I was a freshman in college, attending a university in New York City. With that being said, I was miles apart from my family, who lived all the way in Bulgaria. For some of you who may not know where that is, Bulgaria is just a small country in Eastern Europe, right by Romania and Greece. Bulgaria's safety, reputation, and regulation isn't really that good, but this story actually contrasts that. I was at JFK Airport maybe just a few days before Christmas Eve, because my initial plan was to surprise my family and friends in Bulgaria. The airport very obviously was packed and loaded with a lot of people, making my traveling experience way more complex and difficult. After hours of security luggage weighing and waiting for time to pass, I finally was at rest when the first plane to Istanbul from Manhattan was setting off. The first plane ride was around 8 hours, so I was prepared to be somewhat miserable and sore for the classic economic seating arrangement. I was sat next to two men. Unfortunately for the record, I'm a 5 feet 110-something pound woman, which didn't make it any better either. These two men were probably well over a foot taller than me and could easily overpower me. The man on the right to me was relatively quiet, black hair, glasses, and low-key ripped. The guy on the left to me, however, freaked me out. He would occasionally mumble to himself quietly and he would pick at his skin, sometimes even nudging his arm close to mine. I took note of the guy to the left of me and tried my best to have a decent 8-hour flight. The only thing keeping me productive was the fact that I'd be in my home country in less than 48 hours. But this productiveness got trimmed short when I'd be minding my business, maybe doing work or listening to music, and the guy left of me would be very bluntly staring at me. I tried shrugging it off. Maybe he has a disability that made him lack social cues. But as time went on, I started to doubt that at some point during the flight, I was watching season 2 of American Horror Story, and the man began speaking to me, asking why I was watching a show that poorly represents the mentally ill, murderers, and whatnot. Very nervously and hastily, I asked him if he needed anything, since it's inappropriate to randomly disturb a stranger who was minding their own business. The season of the American Horror Story I was watching was Asylum, which portrays cold-blooded murderers and insane people of a mental hospital. The guy looked me straight in the eye and said very candidly, "I just think it's fucked up how everyone thinks people who skin others alive are crazy. I mean, aren't we all like that?" I mentally began freaking out, asking myself, who the hell was I sitting next to? And did anyone else hear that? I chuckled, brushing it off to seem unbothered for the rest of the flight. I was scared to shitless, and I contemplated asking for an open seat that may have been available by the back of the plane. But nonetheless, the flight came to an end and we arrived in Istanbul. I gathered my stuff as quickly as I could and escorted myself out of the plane as soon as possible. Now, I wish I could say the story ends there, but unfortunately it does not. The rest of my Christmas was fine, but what that man said still rung in my head like a bell. As January approached, I began packing up again to head back to New York. I was sorting out my tote bag and throwing out any old trash I may have stuffed in there from traveling when I came across a disgusting note that must have been slipped in there when I was sleeping. It read the following: "I wish I could see what you look like under your skin. I really wish I took a picture of it as evidence, because only a month later into February, there was a news article that my younger sister sent to me that basically talked about the same exact man from my plane ride being sent to jail for multiple accounts of rape, attempted rape, kidnapping, attempted kidnapping, and first-degree murder in Istanbul. Reading that article made me sick to my stomach, and honestly, that whole experience drove me to just stay home for the holidays for a few years.